There are different kinds of Vietnam veterans. There are people who have gone there, and like me, I got over and I got a pretty fortunate assignment. There were other ones who fought a lot harder than I did. One of those is Eric Knauf. So, how did you happen to get into the military?
Well, it was a rough childhood, so I was on my own since I was about 16.
Oh.
And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was going to Penn State, and war was going on, and that was in '69. And I ended up not going back to college because, of course, money was real thin when you didn't have any. And between the draft notices and the running out of money, why I thought it was a good solution. And I've always loved my country, so I thought, well, we'll just kill about 3 or 4 birds with one stone. And I enlisted, and then they sent me to Fort Polk, Louisiana. And
I've heard that's a very nice place. No.
July and August, it was really nice. Yeah, down in the swamps and the sand ticks and the red ants and everything else that you don't particularly care for.
Yeah.
So I did my basic training, and through all of my testing and all of my training, they, of course, as you know, they tell you qualify for this or you qualify for that. Would you like to go to, jump school or OCS or whatever? And one of the things I qualified for was warrant officer flight training.
Oh, okay.
And they had advised me that I could go. It's a very high washout rate, and I'd end up going back to some other second profession in the military. But I thought, well, we'll give that a try. You can't beat a free education learning how to fly if, in fact, it happens. And then they told me once you graduate, if and when that happens after 9 months, why they most of the time sent you to Vietnam. And there your casualty rate was so high that you'd probably not be able to put your flight training into use when you came home, because you good chance you won't.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's okay. We'll give it a try. I mean, you're as good as you are. So I graduated from basic training, which isn't hard. Everybody pretty much graduates from basic training one way or another. And went to Fort Walters, Texas for primary flight training. And I thought, well, where's the helicopters? And the first thing they did was hand me a stack of books about this high and said, well, after several months of studying and reading, then we'll talk about flying. I said, oh, okay. So they put you through all the maintenance training and all the navigation training. They put you through everything that an aviator, as they called them, not pilots, needed to know, because you were pretty much by yourself. You didn't have a crew of 5 behind you navigating you and checking the weather and talking on the radios. You had to talk and navigate and do it yourself. So you had to be a little bit step higher than what you would call a pilot. You had to be an aviator.
Yeah.
So I graduated from Walters, soloed, and did everything I needed to do at Fort Walters, and they sent me to Fort Ruckert, Alabama for advanced helicopter training, which there we got into the Hueys rather than the little what they called TH-55s, which is gas powered, that you had to regulate the engines yourself and everything. It was like a monkey trying to sit on top of a basketball, trying to do everything at one time. A little easier with the Hueys because they were governors and regulated, and you didn't have to do 9 different functions at one time. So we got done with Fort Ruckert, Alabama, and graduated from there, and got my orders for Vietnam. And so in June of '70, a year later, I showed up in Vietnam and in the Saigon area, and they had orders for me to assign me to a unit in the Delta, and I flew with that unit, and I was over there for a year, and 365 days exactly, and counted down almost every one of them, especially the last 30 or 40.
Yeah. With your first assignment there in the Delta, what were you flying? What kind of helicopters?
Hueys.
Your Hueys, okay.
Hueys. And
combat or?
Combat, oh yeah, instantly the same day.
Yeah.
I flew Hueys for the whole year, and I was also the unit instructor pilot, and we went through pilots quite fast, so I became a first pilot relatively fast, and I became an aircraft commander real fast. And then they made me this unit instructor pilot also, so all the new pilots coming to the country would have to fly with me. And then before they could ever make a level of being an aircraft commander, I also had to release them to be a qualified aircraft commander, combat pilot. And that took a while generally. So we were in the Delta for a while. They're just coming out of Cambodia when I got there, and we went down and did a lot in the Human Forest and way down to the very tip and up along the Mekong. And then come Christmas of '70, they said, well, we have a genius idea. We're going to do what's never been done in history. We're going to move a bunch of units up to the DMZ and out to Quezon that was evacuated and and left because the Marines got beat by the Vietnamese up there. And so we went back and took over Quezon and opened that base up, and we were going to go into Laos and cut the Ho Chi Minh trails. Needless to say, 128 destroyed aircraft, 618 damaged aircraft, and 55 pilots and dead, and 100 and some wounded, and they forced us out of Quezon back to Quang Tri and took Quezon back over, and we did what was never been, we didn't do what has never been done before, and beat the communists in their own really backyard at a tremendous expense, considering it was only aviation units, no combat units American. So all the dead ground forces were Vietnamese, North and South, to the tune of 15,000 North Vietnamese and 7,000 or 8,000 South Vietnamese. It was pretty disastrous. So we lost that and went back to Quang Tri, and so I thought, well, we'll send you back from the DMZ to the Delta. And we said, okay, so we packed everything up and packed our tents up and flew back down to, and had kept our original base open for us. And then we said, well, Phnom Penh's under siege, and they can't get resupplies in there up in Cambodia at the capital from the Pathet Lao. So we're going to escort all the big ocean liners the whole way up the Mekong into Phnom Penh. And that way we can, all the assaults that are upon the river boats and the big freighters bringing supplies, we can go up and down the riverbanks and take out the positions. So we did that for a while, and one of the orders were, if you get shot down, which I did in Laos, but I didn't in Cambodia. Needless to say, they got me out of Laos. And they said, if you get shot down, don't get out of your aircraft, because we're not allowed to have boots on the ground in Cambodia. And my comment was, well, if I get shot down, if it's on fire, and I make it down, I'm getting out. You know, if I get shot down and it's not on fire, and there are people that shot me down and are on their way to get me, I'm still going to get out.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they said, well, we can't make a comment on that. And I said, you don't have to. So we did that Cambodia deal for a while, and I've got a lot of pictures of the Mekong River and the freighters going up, and Phnom Penh, beautiful city, all French. Oh my God, wait till you see some pictures of Phnom Penh. What a gorgeous city just to have bombed and destroyed, but that's the way of life over there, all in the name of God and freedom. And so they said, okay, we're sending you home, you made it. I said, great. But you either have to get out or sign an indefinite status. And I said, well, I don't think I'd ever want to stay in the Army indefinitely. How long would I have to stay in? And they said, till we're tired of you or have no more use for you. It could be 6 more months, it could be 10 years. I said, we'll get out. So they flew us from Vietnam to Alaska, the whole way across Canada, across North America, the whole way to New Jersey. Landed at 4 in the morning, and about 11 o'clock in the morning, I was a civilian heading for Philadelphia Airport, carrying my gun and heading home. A few years go by and get a few letters about signing up for National Guard and Reserves, and I didn't think that was a good idea. I'd gotten married and had other things going on in my life. I didn't need the military too much anymore. And finally they got real stern about it, said, well, if you don't want to sign up for a National Guard or Reserve unit, how about we just bring you back active duty and we'll decide what's going to happen with it from there on. I said, I'll find a reserve unit or a guard unit real fast, which I did in Washington, Pennsylvania, which went through another 3 years, almost 4 years down there, and which wasn't so bad. You know, weekend drills every other, 1 weekend a month supposedly, but we had the same flight requirements as active duty. So I was down there 2 weekends a month, but we had a place to stay right at the facility, and it was nice. And summer camp was 2 weeks long, and that was a nice break. And my daughter was born, and I left for summer camp. My wife wasn't happy. My daughter was born into May, and I left for summer camp in June and left 2 weeks and came home, was home for a couple of days, got a phone call, and they said, your unit's been activated. Get down to Washington, Pennsylvania as fast as you can. As soon as the crew comes in, that you can man an aircraft, take off, and head for Johnstown. It just flooded. I said, oh, what are we supposed to do? When you get there, you'll know. So I took off, and we had another pilot come in and a crew come in. We got an aircraft ready, and we took off, and we got to Johnstown. It wasn't too hard to figure out with all the people staying on the roof of their buildings with the water's coming in the front door that they need to be.
Yeah.
So we spent 2 weeks at Johnstown flood just pulling people out and body recovery, and then when we were done with the Johnstown flood, back to regular guard unit hours, and it ended my obligation for my reserve or National Guard status and my status to the military, because when I got out of flight school, it was a 3-year commitment, and I only served one of it in Vietnam, so I had a 2-year commitment yet to the military for my education. And there again, your contracts as such with the government. So I got out of the service and never looked back, physically, mentally, every day. Yep, every day.
Well, you have a lot of flight hours in Vietnam.
Some are close to 1,100 flight hours, which is a fair amount.
Yeah,
to get shot at.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and I had a fair amount of it in Laos, and had some real terrifying assignments as such.
Yeah.
When in Laos, they wanted to get pictures of Typhoon, which is the main city outside of North Vietnam and at the top of Laos above the DMZ, that all the supplies and troops and convoys would come down the Ho Chi Minh trails, of which there's several trails. There ain't just one trail coming down. There's quite a few.
Yeah.
But they wanted to get pictures, and they couldn't get pictures anyway at all, so they wanted to equip a Cobra gunship with cameras to go up and try and get pictures, because they were getting ready to launch a big offensive towards us, because we had just moved in there and they wanted to get us out again. Well, they didn't have, they needed someone to fly Huey up there as a chase ship, because if the Cobras went down, they wouldn't be able to pick each other up because there was no room. So I volunteered for that, and as I got there and the anti-aircraft guns started going off, and we left altitude of 8,000 because we couldn't get good pictures. The airbursts got very intense, and about then when the airbursts were going off all around me, I thought to myself, who's going to get me when I get shot down? And but we got back, and I had over 100 holes in my aircraft, and the damn old Huey was still flying. 100 air flak and bullet holes, and I'll tell you what, I don't care what they say about these new Blackhawks. Those old Hueys, you just couldn't put them down. You just couldn't do it.
That is amazing.
So we got the pictures, and we put our counteroffensive against the counteroffensive, but in the long run it didn't make a difference, because you know, down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, they're like ants. We'd call in B-52 strikes at night, and we'd lay over there on the ground, and the ground would just shake all night. And we'd get up in the morning and go get a count and see how much damage we did all night with the B-52 arc lights. They're already rebuilt and traffic on them. There's so many hundreds of thousands of Chinese just living on them. Just like stepping on an anthill. It didn't matter. And that's what happened with us flying in Laos. It was, you know, it was just crazy. You just couldn't win. They would set up positions. They'd set up a position you'd want to go after it. They'd get your attention, and you'd roll in. Well, they'd set up on each mountainside anti-aircraft guns. So as you would fly into that spot, they nailed you. And one of our aircraft, of course, we lost a fair amount of people there, but one of our aircraft went down, and first aircraft went in and tried to get him out and got all shot up and made it out of that area and before he went down. And so we went in, tried to get him out too, and same thing happened to us, and we got out of that tense area, and they came and got both of us, both the aircraft full. But those pilots were Mooney Babcock, and they're still, as far as I know to this day, laying on the ground there in that position. Could never get them out, could never account for them. And then several weeks after that, we were coming back in from Laos, and it was terrible. It was weather was closing in with the case on. Of course, there again, like I said, you had to be an aviator because back then we didn't have navigation. They didn't have instrument approaches. They didn't have anything. You know, you just flew. You either flew it or you didn't. So they were GCAS talking us down, and we were flying instruments, but they would tell us turn left, turn right, descend, turn. And they'd bring us right in on the dime. We'd land right out of the clouds.
Well, you flew Hueys, but what else? You flew other type of aircraft.
I flew Mike model gunships also, which are not a Cobra. The Mike model gunships were the predecessor to the Cobra gunships.
Okay.
They were the smaller, little bit smaller body than the Huey. They weren't quite as big an interior room, and they were set up on a little different platform, so the aircraft nose would set flat with your guns on your sides and your rocket launchers. With the Huey, it set a little bit nose higher and a little bit more of an interior, a little bit longer of an aircraft. And they had, the Mike models was a Huey, which an enlarged, more powerful engine, turbine, jet engines, I guess best way to explain it. People don't understand the turbine always. And with a 540 rotor system, which was the big, huge blades. And the reason you need the larger blades and the more powerful engine is in your gun runs, when you pulled in power to come out of your gun run, the G-forces and the stress on the airframe and the lift required with the blades, a smaller blade and a smaller engine would just start to bleed off, and you just keep going into the ground.
Yeah.
But the Mike model gunships were a four crew person, and the guns and the rocks were shot by the pilots in the front, and the easier way to shoot those aircraft was the old. There they used to tell you to bring the pipper sight down and lock it in and look through it. And all, you know what? Roll in, set up your target, take your grease marker, hit it on your windshield. You knew where the hell you were shooting. You didn't need all that. You need all that stuff. So we'd go out and we'd get an area that had some heavy concentration of activity, and our loaches would go down in the trees, buzz around, and
Try to get shot at.
And the wing loach would try and suppress some of the fire, and they'd get out of the area, and the Cobras were always circling high, and they would roll in, and we always used to laugh. Well, where do you know where to shoot at? And well, wherever the burning loach is where you shoot.
Oh Lord.
No, that was a calf story. Wherever the burning loach is where you want to shoot. Just 9 times out of 10 they're dead already anyhow, so just open fire. And end of the day, if contacts were over or we accomplished our missions as such for the day, we'd head home. But our primary mission was, now when we went into Laos, the hunter killer teams didn't work in our unit. The amount of anti-aircraft guns and the amount of people on the ground waiting for us to come when the loaches went down to try and find them and take some fire, they didn't even get down there. They were taking fire. So our missions then became pretty much to support the ground troops, that we had assault helicopter companies that were bringing in the Vietnamese ground troops, and all the cab units like ourselves were giving gun support to the insertions of the assault helicopter companies, bringing, of course the problem you have is, like the one time they had 5 or 6 aircraft coming into a landing. It's their second mission to land and drop troops off, and the Vietnamese the North Vietnamese had zeroed in on the landing zone, and the 5 touched down, but none of them took off. It was over. And then in Khe Sanh, they had us zeroed in because we were so close we were only a mile from the Laotian border, and a mile and a half, 2 miles from the DMZ, and they had mountains above us between us and the DMZ, and at night they just would lob stuff in on us. We were underground, and aircraft would come in to resupply us, and Khe Sanh was up on top of a little plateau, and there was a valley, and the C-130s and the Caribous, which was the 123s, would come in real low, pop up just to touch down on the runway, and they just keep right on going, stuff thrown out the back. And as they went down the runway, the mortars were coming right behind them. And every once in a while they'd hit one, and we had to go clean it off so we could get some more supplies in. But we didn't even stay right up in Khe Sanh. We stayed about a half a clip to the south, and there's a picture of our little foxhole we dug in our little sandbag areas we stayed in, and we stayed there with a couple of tanks out in front of us between us and 22,000 NBA. I thought, how the hell is this going to work? And one night it didn't work, and we were started to be overrun, and about a half a click up the road was an artillery base, and we called in for fire support. Of course, they said, how the hell are we going to support you here right there? And this is an amazing story, and the truth is I'm sitting here and everything I say is documented. So they started shooting. Our whole perimeter was, and they started shooting. We could hear the cannons going off, just boom, 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 just going off and going off. And we're sitting there. Well, these guys ain't doing us any good. What the hell is all this? And it seemed like a lifetime. They shot straight up in the air, straight down, and lit up our barbed wire. Lit it up. Just lit it up. We didn't get overrun that night. They got my aircraft. I think I brought a picture of it smoldering in our little, maybe I didn't. I don't think I brought that one, but they did get my aircraft. But we had to be real careful. Aircraft, the zappers would come in at night and throw satchel charges up in our exhaust stacks. And then we'd crank up in the morning and get up to, started getting heated up back there, and boom. So we had to make sure we checked our exhaust stacks real good before we cranked up, because they were pretty good about not causing any stink and not letting anybody know they're there, just wanting to throw some satchels in there and get across the compound and get out.
Sappers, is that what they were called?
Yeah, they just sneak through the barbed wire and low crawl through the brush or whatever they had to do.
Carrying explosives.
Carrying explosives, throwing them in and crawling back out. And so the first thing you did every morning was check your aircraft for bombs and such, and then the second thing you did, check and see it was ready to fly.
Well, you brought a few pictures.
Yes, I did.
I would like you to, just go through and pick out ones that you think are worth commenting on.
And that's just a little bit before I went home. I'm staring out in the darkness, and I'm trying to figure out, am I going to make it a few more days? This is interesting. Here's a picture of a lot of little kids coming around our aircraft, all grouped together for a picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I wonder how they grew up, because all of us pilots that came home, take a look at the pictures. Isn't that amazing? There's a picture of a bunch of little kids, and a picture of us. It's amazing what happens to you in life. And the stack of books. But we did have fun. We found a little creek just offside the base. We put a couple guards up. We all went swimming. We'd have to burn the leeches and stuff off us, but it's one way of getting a shower. And these pictures are all just pictures of Laos and mountaintops and Ho Chi Minh trails. And every once in a while we couldn't see them high enough from the air, so we would just go right down on the trail. We could hit them on the head with our guns if we had to, rather than shoot them. Oh yeah, we were right down there. Yeah, I can't understand their thinking sometimes. I got 7 awards for valor, of which was something I did every day, and it was our job. But they picked particular days to do it. We came back out of Laos one night, and almost out of gas, and co-pilot looked over and said, "Sir, there's 14 enemy tanks right there aimed towards the Vietnamese unit coming back across the border." I looked and I said, "Well, pretty good count, about 14." So we didn't have any ammunition, we didn't have any gas, we didn't have anything. So we called the OV-10s, which were Air Force spotter planes, and they were always on station. You could call them, and they were the ones that controlled the fighter jets from up high. So an OV-10 bird dog, as they call them, came over, and I told him we had 14 tanks, and he didn't believe us. So I said, "You stay right where you're at watching me, and I'll show you." And I flew right down, and they were shooting the hell out of us, trying to get us, and dropped smoke bombs in the front of the tank and the back of the tanks. And I said, "There are your 14 tanks." And there's a write-up in there for that exact, I'm telling you, happened. So he told us to move out of the way, and he would take care of it. And we slid over a little bit. The next thing we saw was 2 F-4 fighter jets come screaming out of the sky, low as they could come, right up to the head of those tanks, dropped their napalms, broke, and lit up all 14 tanks. Then the F-4 jockey calls me up and says, "Hey, can you go get me a body count?" I said, "Yeah, 14 times 4. There's your body count. I'm going home."
Yeah, let me land down
there.
let
me go down there. I just sighted them, and you lit them up, and you want me to go down and count the burning bodies as they're running through the jungle.
Yeah, thanks.
He says, "If any luck at all, to catch the jungle on fire and get anybody else that's hiding in there." But that was. But the real enjoyable part was the missions that we were set on to actually rescue people in trouble, wounded. And that's what made you feel so good.
Yeah.
You know, we went one night and couldn't get them out, and there's a write-up in there about that. And I volunteered to try. No one else could get them. And clouds were down to the top of the trees. You just had to go slow through the trees till you found a hole and drop down the hole and load them up and come back up. Of course, the hole you went down through, the air was sitting there waiting for you. So
Yeah.
they opened fire on you, but you got to sit there till they load up the wounded, pull them out, and get them back to, hopefully get them back. But the weather was so bad, if you got there, you'd damn well get home trying to get them back.
Yeah.
So that was that really made you feel good when you know you pulled people out, and you spend part of the day shooting at people and the other part of the day pulling people out. But the difference was the other
Theirs
part
and
was
yours.
shooting at you.
Theirs and ours,
You know? Yeah. And then sometimes when you're in certain troops, you have to fly down and land. And when we were in certain troops, we'd fly right up to the tree line, and we'd be staring at it, and the tree line would just light up. AKs, you could just hear them over your aircraft shooting at you, but you couldn't take off because you had to wait for the troops to get out before you could take off. And I was always the flight lead in any of those situations, so I was always the first one at the tree line, and I couldn't go anywhere. My fourth aircraft said we were clear, and we'd pull up, turn around, take back off. So I said, the next time we go in and do this crap, we're going to go in and land and put our tails to the trees. That way they can't shoot through the cockpit ass. There's nothing worse than seeing bullets coming through your windshield. And of course, if you ever heard an AK shoot, you never forget it. And so we started going in with our tails. We were putting troops in the full pilots out of our, and land with our tails to the tree line. And they still screw your aircraft up. They had a lot hard time getting to you.
Yeah.
And we got back one time, and my crew chief said, "Boy, you lucked out on that one." I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "The post right behind the pilot seat." He said, "Look at this, armor piercing round. It's a post and another post in between." And went through the first one, the second one, back out through the second one, out through the outside shell, and sticking out just a little hair right at the back of my helmet. I said, "Wow." I said, "God bless these Hueys. They could take a hit. They could take a hit all the time." But yeah, you never knew what you're going to run into, and every day was a new experience. And even though it's the same war, it's still new people. And the only thing you hated was seeing people, friends you met, got to be good friends with, going home the hard way.
Yeah.
There were good friends you didn't want to go home. You wanted to stay with you, which luckily went home.
Yeah.
But when it was your turn, as good of friends as some of those guys were, I still went home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got some artifacts here.
Yes.
What you got? What's this?
Well, I was in the 7th and 1st Air Cav Unit. Our Cobra gunships are the ones that you see on TV and all the war flicks with the shark's teeth on them. We had the shark's teeth, and we were actually a cavalry outfit like the old Wild West Custards. This was my original hat from 1970, 71. This poor sucker's been in the drink, in the water, out in the rain.
And then what you got back there?
Well, this is a Chinese communist called a Chi-Com. It was a popular gun. Probably not quite as popular as the AK-47, but this was Chinese made. It could take a real beating. The gun cleaning kit that was in the stock, you push it down and it pops up. You got a gun cleaning kit. And it's not loaded, believe me. You can sight it in, you can elevate the sights. It was great for sharpshooting. Had the safeties and all, and it even had the bayonets for getting closer to hand to hand.
What caliber is it, you know?
7.62.
7.62. Okay, that's kind of what
Yeah, we used to like to throw a lot of, if there's any government people watching, we used to like to throw a lot of boxes of ammunition out around our compound, and they would pick them up and shoot them back to us at night. The difference is ours had tracers, theirs didn't. So when they take our bullets to shoot back at us, we could just roll right in on the tracer line, and generally our miniguns had more firepower than their AK.
You think so?
I know for a fact.
Yeah, minigun is awesome.
Yep, so that was the Chinese, and this is which will make most Vietnamese veterans quibble. This is actually a VC flag. This is the real McCoy.
Look at that.
Yep. And there again, just in case any government people was looking, I got my documentation. I brought it all home legally as a war trophy. So,
all right.
Yeah, but that's quite an interesting.
How did you get that?
Well, we came upon a Vietnamese tax collection point. alongside the river, which was very typical of how they supported their wars on a local basis. They would set up these tax collection points, and the sampans would come down the river, which was the main mode of transportation. As you well know, you were there. They would stop them and appropriate whatever money or rice or whatever they happened to have. So we didn't really think that tax collection point needed to be there much longer, so we took care of it. And of course, they didn't need the gun or the flag any longer either, so I brought them home and went and got them registered, and they're legally mine and legally allowed to have them. Vietnam helicopter pilots are really still a very close niche group.
I can believe that.
This is the membership directory. This is almost every pilot, when they graduated, where they live, phone numbers, communications, who they served with over there, what flight school. Yeah, this is a list of all the different graduating classes, list of all the, and each one of these have beside their names, killed in action, still alive, missing, total research of every pilot, dead or alive. I always say if I could do anything for my retirement, if I could volunteer to go back and find people without all the political bureaucracy that's preventing them from doing the job they're trying to do, I would love to have that opportunity, because I still believe they're there. I still believe there's POWs, and I'll go to my grave believing it. I just will.
I hear you have a pile of junk in your basement. What does that consist of?
Well, I made that comment because when I came home from the service, that's where I packed it all up in the box and put it down there.
Packed all what?
Well, my junk.
What's junk?
I got 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses for Valor. I got 4 Air Medals for Valor, and I got 33 additional Air Medals for flights, stuff that I did, and the Bronze Star and Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry, double palms, and of course all of the sharpshooters and marksmen and all the other stuff that everybody else got. But they gave me a lot of recognition for doing my job. I guess maybe that's why I referred to it as a bunch of junk in the basement, because a lot of the things I did, so did a lot of other people. And a lot of the other people that did what I did paid for it with their lives. Made the ultimate sacrifice. I got to come home. They probably wish they could sit in front of you and say they have a lot of junk in their basement. But they can't. And I can. And I got it. And there again, it's not something I bring out and show to people. I finally showed it to my kids a couple years ago at Memorial Day 500 when I was honored there. They had never seen any of it. And I showed you a few years back when we originally were talking about a magazine that was being published by a local Tom Flynn. And
that was for the Vietnam Wall.
For the Vietnam Wall, which was quite an honor that we get that here in Hermitage. And I had never been to the wall in D.C., and I came to it here. And then went to it in D.C. A lot of names on it that I know. Well, my youngest son, who lives here, came by and got me and brought me up to this one. And then my older son took me to the one in D.C. And it was quite moving, as well as was the women's tribute down by the wall for all the women who served in Vietnam that got basically no recognition for what they had done. Went to flight school for a year, went to Vietnam for a year, and came home and quit my military service, and I was still only just 21.
Wow. Well, I tell you, I appreciate you coming in and talking to me. That's,
absolutely. Because I generally don't do much talking about this stuff.
And I really want to thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
And what you continue to do. So,
thank you.
Appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.